Hello everyone, thanks for watching. I just want to talk for a few minutes about developing this culture of learning and what standards-based learning and what taking steps towards those principles will do for this culture of learning that you can develop in the classroom. And once again, in case you don't know, I'm a math teacher. Taught 8th grade math for the last 5 years, and just this year moved to the high school level, teaching mostly 9th graders Math 1 here in West Virginia. I'm at Ripley High School this year. But first, this thought of standards-based learning, in case you've maybe not been exposed to it, I'm not going to be able to cover that in just a few minutes, but in general, there are a lot of students taking retakes in my classroom. Really, the learning or the track of learning is based on improvement. So there's really 3 phases, probably an instructional phase, a practice phase where students in a math classroom, it's probably easier to do this, but in the practice phase, I'm providing them a buffet, if you will, of opportunities for them to practice the desired skill or goal that we're trying to achieve. And then there's an assessment phase, and the 3 phases are really not they're really more fluid than what I'm making them sound. There could be students at any of those 3 phases at any given time, and I leverage technology to be able to liberate me to act more as a coach, more of a rudder on the ship, guiding all 20 or 25 students that class period, making sure they're on the right path. And throughout those 3 levels, I also incorporate small opportunities here and there for them to reflect on their progress, reflect on their effort, reflect on their successes and their failures, really. And that those opportunities could come in the form of just one open response question at the end of a Google form, at the end of class, or at the beginning of class, or at the end of an assessment is probably most common used for me. The last question on all the tests I give I ask students to give themselves a grade, and I often ask them to respond to some of the same questions I just asked you. So that's happening a lot in class, and that's sort of maybe more descriptive of the student-centeredness that's occurring in the classroom. But I believe this thought of being student-centered paired with standards-based learning principles is really where you start to see this culture of learning develop in your classroom. I am often a participant in hashtag COL chat, call chat, on Twitter, which stands for Culture of Learning Chat. So a lot of what I've learned comes from those guys, and more specifically, I'm a really big fan of Rick Wormeli. So I've probably watched and listened to every Rick Wormeli video on YouTube. I've never seen him face to face, never been to a conference where that he spoke at, but probably have heard most of his talking points just from watching YouTube videos. So this culture of learning, and what can standards-based learning do for your classroom if you want to take steps towards that. And let me make this clear too before I go on. This thing of retakes and the fluidness of where students are in the classroom, that's been a journey for me. And so I don't want anybody to think, I got to start doing that and I could do it next month. I tip my hat to you if you could, and it would be a worthy try, but to take a traditional classroom, even if you are using some measure of technology, and trying to create this really fluid pace, design short targeted assessments that students can take fairly quickly and that you can check and provide adequate feedback on fairly quickly. To make all those changes at once would be a arduous task. So, and which just reminds me, I didn't really get into the assessments, but I can do that quickly. I used to design 25 or 30 question tests at the end of a unit or whatever, and that would take students most of the period. And I would have the task of checking those things. I know a lot of teachers, maybe still now, but at least several years ago, were using the Scantron sheets, multiple choice, because obviously they could check, they could run them through and grade them pretty quickly. I wasn't doing that. I would make them on paper. I didn't believe in having a math test that was strictly multiple choice. But either way, it took me a long time to grade them. And the amount of feedback that I could give on that kind of a test was very minimal. And most of the feedback was in the form of a red pen, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's really not the kind of feedback that you want to provide to learners in the classroom if you're trying to develop this culture of learning. Rather, I shifted to taking maybe providing more assessments, but shortening them up to maybe 4 to 5, maybe 6 problems, and I really tier them. So this is necessary for anybody to do, and I don't think it gets done often enough, but take your curriculum or take your standards and really chunk out the things that are must cover. These things that you cannot skip over, the things that you cannot miss throughout the school year, and dedicate your time and energy to covering those things, and then dedicate your assessments to measuring those things. And I'm not saying you skip over any of the standards necessarily, but there are some that may be more difficult to design an assessment for. There may be some that, I'll be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things, just might not be as important as others. So try to take those out, and then what I did was tier the assessments. So I have my first question or second question be something of, in math we call it this depth of knowledge 1, or maybe depth of knowledge 2, something that would be, the verbs that would be considered in that context would be calculate or compute, simplify. I'll be honest with you, something that Google could do for you. Not that I'm advocating my students use Google all the time, but nor yours. But things that we, as math teachers, students need to be able to do, but things that just don't reflect a deep sense of deep amount of learning, that's required to answer those things. And then questions 3, 4, 5, 6, as you get down, now you're moving into this depth of knowledge 3 area, where you may be asking students to justify or to argue one process or method over another. You may be getting them analyzing graph and interpreting data, just these higher ordered verbs. That's what you're trying to ask at the end of your assessment. And I already talked about how I wrap this up. I give students an opportunity to reflect. I try to do that on every assessment. I think that helps develop this culture when students are exercising some metacognition about how they're learning, and how they're even demonstrating that learning, because sometimes you have a student that may come up with an idea that they have, the way that they would like to demonstrate their learning, that may be better than what you've thought about. So that's just a good practice in itself. So that's my test. Those are my assessments. And then back to this culture of learning and what standards-based learning can do. Taking these retakes, taking this fluidness, being really student-centered, and not measuring the process, more measuring the product. So I don't grade the journey of how students get to their goal, how they achieve that standard. I rather grade solely, exclusively on their product. And even those grades aren't set in stone. Like I said, I try to offer, when you're creating really short assessments that are targeted, you could easily create 3 of them in the same amount of time that it would take you to create one large one 25 or 30 question test, so if you understand what I'm saying. So I'm really not adding any more work to my load than what I was previously doing. Not to mention, again, with a 5 or 6 question test, you can provide really descriptive feedback to that student in a one-on-one setting in a matter of 1 minute or 2. And when the testing happens fluidly, and you're not telling everyone that they have to sit down on Thursday, take the test on Thursday, whether you're ready or not, everyone's going to take it on Thursday. When I don't do those things, there's a good chance that I may only have 5 or 6 students taking a test one day, and in that case, because I've liberated myself from sitting and grading, or I honestly don't sit at my desk at all during the day, I have a lot of free time now. And I don't say free time, but time, more valuable time is what I should say. I have more valuable time, and part of that time now is spent providing really descriptive feedback. And I go over every problem with the students. We look at exactly how they went wrong, and I try to, I actually exercise my questioning during this time with students because I really like them to diagnose what they did wrong rather than me. So those things are happening now, and I say they're happening in place of the time I used to spend, after school grading 25 or 30 question tests, writing grades, putting them in the grade book. That stuff's happening in place of other time that I used to spend was trading and grading worksheets or homework, classwork. I felt that I needed to grade those things, so part of the class time would be spent me up front calling out answers. Number 4 is -5. Number 5 is 13. Number 6 is -1. What was number 5 again? Okay, I'll go back to number 5. I'm not doing any of that in the classroom, which if you're doing that, it's nice that you're trying to provide that feedback to the students, but in the terms of, how valuable is it? Is it down here or is it up here? I don't know that that's real valuable, and I think we can replace that time with activities that make us more valuable. So that's sort of what I've done. But standards-based learning, what are some key points? What am I going to look for in the classroom? Well, you're going to teach more responsibility that way. And I know that in a lot of people's eyes, I've seen it over and over and over and over and over, that's contrary to what they think. They think by standing their ground and giving zeros, they're teaching responsibility for those students who didn't study and didn't put in the necessary work in preparation for that test that happened on Friday. And I'm going to teach them responsibility by giving them that 40%, and I'm going to put it in the grade book, and we're going to move on. That's not teaching responsibility at all. Rather, you'll teach more responsibility if you offer students the opportunity to recover from those F's. So recovering from the F's, what do you mean by that? That's what I mean when I'm giving this descriptive feedback and allowing students an opportunity to retake tests, take version 2 or version 3 if they need to, and they're going back to the drawing board and remediating those skills. That's recovery, and that's where responsibility is going to be learned. More engagement and more effort you're going to see in the classroom, especially from those students who traditionally struggle, because now they feel that there's a sense of hope in the classroom. The teacher's not going to move page by page, unit by unit, regardless of how much I've learned. The teacher's going to let me learn, or in some ways you may say force me to learn, because he or she has offered me so many opportunities to demonstrate my learning. They're patient with my learning. It doesn't happen on a conveyor belt, which I think all teachers would admit. Learning doesn't happen on a conveyor belt for all students at the same time. So you're going to see more engagement and more effort from those students, which is helpful. You're going to see more perseverance from students. They're going to continue to work because they know there's hope now. Peer-to-peer interactions are going to increase because you've got students at multi levels in the classroom, which sometimes may present a problem for the teacher to prepare or prep things for those higher students to do. But now you've got a class of several assistants now where they can offer support to those students. You can have these conversations about helping and telling. And the last one is like I indicated earlier, there's an increase in quality time with the students on my part. I spend a bulk of my periods on a knee, and I hate it this year because I've got a tile floor. I had carpet. It's a little more comfortable in the knees last year, but I've got a tile floor, and most of my time is spent on a knee, or if there's an empty desk, sitting next to that student at the empty desk, providing quality time with that student that I didn't have else before. So I appreciate you listening, and I just wanted to share those things with you. Thank you.